All right. So hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Noelle St. Germain Sayre, and I'm the Counseling Clinical Experience Director at William & Mary. I will go ahead and share. Click. All right, are you, okay, I need to see. Are you guys actually, you're probably not seeing it. Let's see, resume share. There we go. Are you seeing the PowerPoint now? Yes?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. I'm going to switch it to slideshow, and here we go. All right, everybody. So again, I'm Dr. Noelle St. Germain Sayre, and the Counseling Clinical Experience Director here at William & Mary. I am based in Denton, Texas. It's about 35 miles north of Dallas-Fort Worth. If you think of Dallas and Fort Worth as the base of a triangle, east and west, we are the northern tip of that triangle right at the top there. They actually do refer to it as the Golden Triangle. And I've been in clinical practice for 27 years, a national certified counselor, 27 years, LPC for 25, LPC supervisor 19, and counselor educator for 18 years. I've also been doing clinical training direction for 10 years this August. I started at Texas Women's University in their counseling program, and then 8.5 years I was the director of training for Argosy University in Dallas. And I came to William & Mary a mere year and month ago. So I am brand new, but not the newest faculty. Dr. Stretch, whom you've all met via email, is our newest, she and Dr. Bergen and Dr. Cashwell, who are coming on in August, but Dr. Stretch is started a year after me. So she is our new program coordinator, and she and I have a lot planned for this online program that we're looking forward to. So let me get started with the practicum orientation. Our dates for practicum are January 11th, 2021 to April 28th, 2021. So you will be starting in January and going through the end of April with your practicum. And we have 2 cohorts going through simultaneously in this next section. So a general timeline for practicum for the clinical sequence is that you start by completing your Wheel 1 coursework. So the first thing to do is focus on your classes, get those under your belt. And then you're going to attend the practicum orientation, which, hello, you're here. So you've already made it to the second bullet. The next thing is, once we conclude the practicum orientation, you can feel free to start looking for a practicum site. There's no need to wait. You can start now and get that process going. I'll talk quite a bit about the search process and some tips and tricks. So then you'll attend Residency 1, which this year, because of the COVID-19 crisis, is going to be completely online, a new and different experience of residency. As disappointed as we all are, I think, in not getting to meet face-to-face, I will tell you that we are pretty excited about the way we're designing this residency. We're actually going to be combining Residency 1 and Residency 2, and the Residency 2 students will be assisting with the Residency 1. So it'll be a real neat opportunity for you guys to work together at different levels in the program, and I think you're really going to enjoy working with them. So the next piece is to complete Wheel 2 courses and your practicum, and then attend Residency 2, and then complete Wheel 3 and internship. You'll of course have courses concurrently with both practicum and internship. So the course itself is EDUC C42, Supervised Practicum in Counseling. It's taken concurrently with the last 2 courses of Wheel 2. Generally that's where it falls, give or take a class. Prerequisites would be your Wheel 1 courses and all prior Wheel 2 courses and Residency 1. So to take practicum, you have to successfully pass all your previous courses and successfully complete your first residency. It's 2 consecutive 7.5-week mini-mesters. So you guys are familiar with the mini-mesters. You take 7.5 weeks, you have a week off, and you do another 7.5-week course. This is going to be 2 consecutive 7.5-week mini-mesters with the week off in between. So it actually comes out to 16 weeks rather than 15. But I just want to mention that because it makes a difference with this course, and I'll explain later. But you need to register for both your A and B sections of practicum at the same time. The reason for that is, even though these are different 7.5-week courses, 2 separate courses, they are in one Canvas shell. So to to make sure you remain in the same section and the same course, we need you to register for both at the same time. So that's important to know. You're also going to have both field work and coursework components in this class, and synchronous and asynchronous components. For internship, I'm going to mention just a little bit about internship in this. There's two separate courses. One of them is for clinical mental health counseling, C47, and one is internship in school counseling, C49. You need to register for the course that's fitting with your concentration. So if you're clinical mental health counseling or CMHC, military veterans, you take C47. If you're school counseling, you take C49. They are two different courses. They're structured differently. They have the same basic requirements though. They're taken concurrently with the last 3 to 4 courses of Wheel 3, and your prerequisites are all Wheel 1 and 2 courses, all prior Wheel 3 courses, and successfully completing Residency 1 and 2. It's over 4 7.5-week mini-masters. So internship 1 runs session A and B, and internship 2 runs session A and B. Each one is considered a class in and of itself. You need to register for session A and B of each semester at the same time. You don't register for internship 1 and internship 2 at the same time, but you do register for internship 1 session A and B and internship 2 session A and B at the times that you register for internship 1 and internship 2. So you take C47 in 2 consecutive semesters for CMHC folks. That means fall, spring, spring, summer, or summer, fall. For school counseling, you're going to obviously take them in fall, spring only. So it'll be fall, spring, I'm sorry, either fall and spring. So either fall, spring, or spring, fall. And you'll do field work and coursework, and it has synchronous and asynchronous components, and I'll talk about those. So what is Practicum? Practicum is your first direct experience working as a clinical mental health counselor or a school counselor in a school or clinical mental health counseling setting. What you'll do is once you have a site placement, you'll work with your supervisor to plan the tasks that are required for the course and figure out how you're going to meet those requirements. There's a variety of strategies for doing this. Obviously, some students are more ready than others to jump in and start seeing clients. Other students might want to do some observation first before they start seeing clients. Some sites might require you to do some observation before they let you see clients independently. So some of the things you might end up doing are orientation and training at the site so that you understand their policies, their procedures, their crisis management strategies, their documentation protocols, etc. You may spend time shadowing other professionals and doing observation of them doing counseling. You may do co-counseling where you actually counsel someone together with another counselor at first. We encourage you, of course, if you do this at first, you need to branch out within the first couple of weeks and start conducting sessions independently. You may conduct intake interviews. You may provide individual counseling sessions. And you certainly are required to provide individual counseling sessions. You're also required to co-facilitate counseling groups. You can independently facilitate them, but I usually tell my students it's best to co-facilitate. A, you're going to learn better, and B, it's really, really useful to learn how to navigate working with a co-facilitator. And 3, you're going to learn from that person who's been doing it for a while. A, B, and 3, I love that, A, B, and C. You might participate in you will participate in individual supervision sessions with your site supervisor. You might attend team meetings at a school or clinical staffings at your site or group supervision sessions that are offered at the site. You're also going to learn to do note writing or documentation according to the protocols and procedures done at your school or your site. And you're going to learn to do the job of a counselor at that site or school. So this is your first introduction to being a counselor. The actual number of hours required are 100. For Practicum, it's a minimum of 100 over 15-week semester. Now, as I mentioned before, you're doing 2 7.5-week mini-masters with 1 week in between, which means you actually get 16 weeks to complete your hours. You are expected to continue working through that break at your site, but we won't have class during that week. It'll be a ghost week, basically, for class meeting. But you can continue accruing hours, and of course, we encourage you to do that because we don't want any break-in services to the clients at the site. So you have a minimum of 40 direct hours required. Direct hours are those where you're providing direct clinical services to students or clients, and 60 indirect hours. And indirect hours include your supervision, attending your class, doing documentation, any trainings or workshops you do, any research that you do, as long as your site supervisor approves that, related to working with students at your school or clients at your site. So you need to get a minimum of 30 hours of individual counseling. It averages about 2 to 3 client contacts per week over 15 weeks. If you don't start seeing clients your first week, you're probably going to be averaging maybe 3 to 5 client hours per week over the remaining weeks of the semester. You are required to get a minimum of 10 hours of group counseling, and those can be done in any breakout that works. If you're at a school, you might only have 30 minutes of group. You might do 45 minutes. It depends on the class, the duration of class periods. If you're at a clinical site, you might be doing an hour-long group or even an hour-and-a-half long group. Sometimes if you do intensive outpatient groups, they can last 3 hours. So the 10 hours is a total across the entire semester, and how that's broken down is up to you and the site supervisor to decide. So other on-site practicum activity, basically this is anything you do at the site that's not direct clinical contact with clients. So this could be doing your charting, like case notes or progress notes, doing research, creating webinars. I had a school counseling student who created a webinar that was used across the district at a bunch of different schools. So anything that your site supervisor approves as appropriate activity for you in your role there at the site is fair game for indirect hours. Some of it can be done there at the site, some of it can be done off-site. And again, I'm using terms of on-site and off-site because there are some sites right now that are actually seeing clients and some schools that plan to start in person in the fall. There are other sites that are completely virtual right now and schools that are completely virtual. I don't know what your individual site or school will be doing. And so basically, I'll let you know that we are accommodating whatever your sites are needing to do with regard to the COVID-19 crisis. I will talk about that more in depth in a bit. Individual supervision with your site supervisor will be 1 hour per week scheduled with your site supervisor. So you have a set time every week that you attend, and you're expected to work with that site supervisor weekly. If your site supervisor needs to designate another supervisor to work with you periodically, that's okay, as long as we have a primary site supervisor that we're working with from the faculty end and that does your evaluations and signs off on your hours. We also expect you to attend a synchronous online group supervision, which is your class meeting, 1.5 hours per week. Generally, this has been scheduled. Last semester, we did it by using a doodle poll and trying to schedule the time that was most convenient for all the students. It's rather challenging with 12 students to try and do that, so we do our best, but usually these end up being in the evenings because that accommodates the most students. So what you'll notice is this is 100 hours over 15 weeks. It comes out to an average of 6 to 8 hours per week. So that's the expectation you can have for practicum. With regard to internship, it jumps up significantly. Now your internship is scheduled to run starting in August of 2021. And one group of you, for some reason, is listed as starting in January of 2022. I am not sure why. It might be an error on my part, but I'm looking into it, and I will certainly let you know if what your dates of internship are once I have that solidified, because they should all be starting August 30th of 2021. Your internship is a 600-hour internship over 2 15-week semesters. 240 hours are direct counseling, 360 are indirect. One of the mistakes I forgot to fix in this one is it says individual counseling. It actually is any kind of counseling that you provide. So this would include individual, group, couples, family, crisis intervention, classroom guidance lessons. All of that counts in the direct hours for internship. Classroom guidance doesn't count for practicum because we really want you getting the experience in practicum of doing individual and group counseling. And there's such a minimum number of hours required that we need those to be individual and group experience. You do not have any requirement in internship to do any type of counseling specifically. We do expect you to do individual counseling, but we also, you can also count group counseling, couples counseling, family counseling, classroom guidance lesson is all counted as direct hours, part of that 240. So you're going to average about 8 hours per week of direct counseling hours when you're in internship. Again, your other on-site practicum activity, and I say on-site here, but remember it can be virtual and it can be arranged with your practicum site it says practicum, I apologize, I should say internship. It can be arranged with your internship supervisor that you can do some of these hours on your own, developing webinars for students, doing research on a clinical population, reading articles that they assign or books that they assign. If they say that stuff counts as your indirect hours, you can count it. So please be aware, I know a lot of people are very concerned about, I'm working full-time and trying to do my internship. If you're able to negotiate some time that you can do outside of your work hours on internship related activity that your site supervisor approves, you can do that on your own time where it doesn't conflict with your work. So I'm trying to make sure people know that so that they understand that it's like a job in the sense of you're making an obligation to the site to provide them a service in return for the supervision and training they're providing you. However, many sites and supervisors are very understanding about the fact that people are working full-time, and they do try to help a little bit, in my experience, by letting you do some things at home on your own time. You do need to get 1 hour per week of individual supervision with your site supervisor throughout the entirety of your internship. You also still need to attend 1.5 hours per week of group supervision with your faculty and class. And you will have 4 hours of individual synchronous supervision scheduled directly with you, with your faculty supervisor. But those 4 hours are spread out over 2 semesters. So you really are only doing two meetings, probably 1 per mini-mester, if you think of it, is how we're going to set it up. So 1 time per mini-mester, per 7.5 weeks, you'll meet with your faculty supervisor. So that's your 600 hours. Now, with internship, there's a difference than with practicum. With practicum, you get 100 hours total, and any hours over that 100 don't count. They don't count toward internship. You cannot roll them into internship. With internship, you have 2 semesters of internship, but you don't have to divide it evenly. You can do 100 hours of counseling in the first semester and 140 in the second semester. You can do 280 hours in the first semester and 320 hours in the second semester to get your 600. So your hours can vary. In internship, if you're short hours in the first semester, say you don't hit 300 in the first semester, you can make them up in internship too. If you go over your 300 hours in internship 1, say you do 400, then you only need 200 hours in internship 2. This allows you some flexibility. You can also use this to gauge what's my busiest times at work and things like that. Okay, we'll talk later about work and accommodating that and how to figure out how to manage that, but I wanted to give you some basic information about the internship. All right, so we keep talking about site supervisors. Well, who are these site supervisors and what do they need to be able to provide you with supervision? First off, they need to have a master's degree in counseling or a related field. A related field to counseling would be psychology, social work, or marriage and family therapy. So they basically need a master's degree in a mental health field. They need to be licensed. For example, an LPC, licensed psychologist, LMSW or LCSW, or licensed marriage and family therapist. Or if they're a school counselor, they need to be certified or licensed. Not all states license school counselors. Some of them provide certification. So for school counseling, you might just need someone who's certified as a school counselor in your state. It just depends on what your state requires. Regardless, they need to have a minimum of 2 years post-master's experience. So the reason this is important is because some LMSWs, licensed master social workers, have just graduated from their master's program and gotten licensed, but they don't have the 2 years post-master's clinical experience that they need to be a supervisor. So that's why that's in there, because we want the person that's supervising you to have the equivalent of what an LPC would have. They don't have to be an LPC, but we want them to have the equivalent training, which would be a license, master's degree in mental health, a license, and 2 years post-master's experience. Okay, so one of the questions came up that Virginia's counseling law says clinical psychologists or LCSWs cannot serve as a supervisor. So one of the things I'm going to say is that I believe that is specific, in fact, I know it is, that is specific to postgraduate interns, not master's level interns. So you guys are master's level interns, and in most states, you can well, actually in all states, you are in a master's program, you can be supervised by anybody who meets the qualifications I'm listing here. After you graduate, you have to be supervised by someone approved by your state. In Virginia, that means you cannot be supervised by an LCSW or a psychologist. You have to be supervised by an LPC or an LPCS. I'm not sure which it is in Virginia. In Texas, where I am, it's an LPCS. You have to be supervised post-graduation by an LPC supervisor. During your master's program, you don't. So during your master's program, we recommend, in fact, that's my next slide, we recommend that you get supervised by an LPCS or an LPC. Either is preferred because they have the identity of a counselor, which is what you're studying to be. And it's important that you learn your counselor identity, and helpful if you get a supervisor who has that identity. But you don't have to have that. It can be an LCSW, LMSW, licensed psychologist, or LMFT at the master's level. So the counseling faculty make the final determination of both the site and supervisor approval, because I have to make sure that they not only meet the qualifications I've listed here, but some additional requirements of CACREP that I haven't listed here. So you can, submit everything to me, and I'll have to go ahead and go through the approval process and make sure that they are actually qualified based on all of CACREP requirements. So the student needs to have a designated primary supervisor who serves as a contact for faculty, verifies hours, and completes evaluations, but a secondary supervisor can assist formally or informally with providing supervision. And you're encouraged to consult with all counselors at your site, school counselors or clinical mental health, to obtain different theoretical approaches and points of view, and just learning how others would work with the clients you're working with and address questions you might have. It's helpful to get multiple points of view. So in terms of site placements, the students are going to secure the site placement outside of your current employment. There's a variety of reasons why we have a policy that says you need to find a site placement outside of your current employment. The main reason for that is ethically, we have to avoid dual relationships with students if we're in a school, or with clients if we're at a site. We also have to avoid dual relationships with our supervisors, which means we can't have previous working relationships with any of these people, either as a teacher or working as a case manager or some other kind of involvement. And we can't have a previous relationship as a coworker, say, with our supervisor. For clinical mental health, typically community service agencies, hospitals, public schools, or institutions of higher learning are where you'll find site placements. And with school counseling, your goal is to work in all levels, elementary school, middle school, and high school, across your 3 semesters of practicum and internship. Your site needs to allow individual and group counseling opportunities. They have to allow video recording of sessions. Now, we say video recording, and I will tell you that if they have a problem with video recording, I will talk to them and see if we can get them to agree. If not, there are situations where we allow audio recording, but I will say that the video recording has to be done with client consent, and we'll talk more about that later. And we want both you and the client in the video, because if we cannot see you and see the client, we are missing so much information that allows us to appropriately supervise you and provide you with the best training possible. So it's really important to counselor training that we be able to observe you doing counseling with clients. This is a practice that's done in every counseling training program that I know of. It is a standard practice, and everybody that's out there doing clinical work understands that this is part of the process. They may not like it, and some sites might actually have a policy against it, but we don't use those sites. I haven't encountered except one site where this was an actual issue that prohibited us from using the site. And even then, it actually depended on the supervisor, because I had another supervisor at the same site tell me that they would allow taping. So again, this is one of those things that usually, we can negotiate. You also need 1 hour per week of individual supervision by a site supervisor. I say that specifically because CACREP only requires you get triadic supervision, which means the site supervisor meets with you and another intern practicum student at the same time and provide supervision. But William and Mary requires individual supervision 1 hour per week because we want you to get that individualized attention from your site supervisor. I haven't had issues with this except one time. Students are responsible for any site requirements for background check, drug testing, any kind of fingerprinting that needs to be done. This is a cost that the student needs to handle. It's also something that's decided by the site or the school district, and you're just basically needing to follow the requirements that they lay out for you with regard to that. And then I make final approval decisions regarding site placements and supervisors. And that's to ensure that we stay in compliance with KCREP. So this is one of the biggest sets of questions that I got from folks that submitted questions. And that is, how are we handling COVID-19? Well, first thing, we want all of you to be safe. And so as far as the university goes, we're working with whatever your sites are doing. We're working within that framework. So some sites have gone completely telemental health. Some school districts are going completely virtual. It just depends on what your specific site or school is doing, and we're accepting that. We're going to have all students sign an acknowledgement of risk. I haven't written it yet. I'm working with our legal department in drafting it, and it will be provided to you prior to practicum. It basically says you understand how COVID-19 is spread, and that you are agreeing to, you acknowledge the risk inherent in doing anything at a site or in a person's home, and that you're going to be taking proper precautions, for yourself and things like that, but that you acknowledge the risk involved, and that you have the alternative of delaying if you want to delay. Certainly that's an option. You can certainly choose to delay your practicum, but understanding that that will have consequences as well in terms of your delaying your program. So, so you can choose sites that are conducting in-person and or telebehavioral health sessions. There's a lot out there of variation, and I couldn't tell you who's doing what. We don't have like a master list or anything like that of who's doing what. And I have a list of current sites that we're using in the, with our current students. But aside from that, I have some tips and pointers and websites you can use, but you have to contact sites and you have to contact schools and find out what they're doing. You can interview at the site virtually if the school or site permits that. And certainly you can provide telebehavioral health services if you're trained and if the site or school permits it. I will be requiring verification of training of telehealth for everyone that's conducting telehealth sessions and every supervisor that's got a student doing telehealth sessions. We do have a free 6-hour telebehavioral health workshop that's available through William and Mary. It was done in the spring. Dr. Lorianne Stretch did it, and we recorded it, and there's a link to it in this PowerPoint, which I will post for you guys. You certainly can complete that, and we haven't made a decision about a minimum number of hours you need to complete of training. I think we talked about 5, but we also need to look and see if there's any state requirements we have to match. And if we don't have like if the 6 hours isn't enough, we can point you in the direction of some other telebehavioral health workshops you can complete. I think there's a lot of free ones still available. And I know that the ASCA website has some school counseling specific telebehavioral health workshops available. I will put those together and put a resource document together for that as well. Sorry, I'm making a note. Okay. So the other thing that we're doing for our students is we recommend that if you do virtual counseling with a school or site, that you use HIPAA compliant site provided virtual platforms. So some sites are using DoxyMe, that's HIPAA compliant. Some sites have purchased HIPAA compliant Zoom. Whatever your site or school is using, as long as it's HIPAA compliant, you should use it also. If they're not using a HIPAA compliant website, like some are just using Zoom or some other method, most of them probably will be moving to that. But if they aren't, William and Mary can provide you a HIPAA compliant Zoom platform. The one that you have from William and Mary now is not HIPAA compliant. But I'll be polling everyone and talking with your supervisors before the beginning of the semester to find out what they're using, if it's HIPAA compliant, and if you will need a William and Mary HIPAA compliant Zoom account. If you do, we will provide one for you. You should be using the site provided documentation service. Many sites have electronic health records that they're using that you can access remotely, or may need to go to the site to access, I don't know. Or if they accept this, you can use we have a HIPAA compliant SharePoint site where we can store recordings and client notes, and the site supervisor can have access to that so they can review your recorded sessions with clients and download the notes and store those notes in their database, and then we can delete them from ours. You're also allowed to attend supervision virtually as long as your site or school permits it, and complete indirect hours virtually, again, if your site and school permit it. Students must follow all site-specific safety plans, including the use of PPE if they're going on site or in a client's home. And I'll talk a little more about that in a little bit. Supervisors are required to verify training or obtain training in telebehavioral health, just like students are. And if the students have a site, if you have a site but cannot obtain all your direct hours, do all your indirect hours. If you can't see clients, and this did happen to one or two of our school counseling students, they started their practicum, but then they had to stop and couldn't see clients, so they didn't have enough hours, direct hours. So they got all their indirect hours, because you don't need clients to get indirect hours. And then you can get an incomplete for practicum and extend it all the way if you need to until your internship begins. And you can start internship with a deficit, basically up to 40-hour deficit in terms of your clinical hours. And you have to make up all of the 40 hours or whatever's remaining from practicum before you can begin accruing any hours for internship. But you are allowed to do that if you need to. So if you're not able to complete your hours in practicum, don't panic. We can roll those remaining hours into internship. If you're unable to locate a site by the January start date, you can defer your practicum until fall, but that may delay your graduation. So I didn't have any students this semester who didn't find a site though. So I'm hoping that with people getting used to telehealth and some other modifications, I've already got people placed for August. So, I'm hoping that by January, y'all be able to find placements. So the ease of finding placements varies greatly. There's a lot of factors this is dependent upon. Some of those have to do with how many training programs there are in your area. Some of it has to do with if you're in a rural area versus an urban area. There's a lot of factors that affect how quickly a student is able to find a placement. Some students find a placement right out of the gate. The first place they go, they find a placement. Some students have looked, I kid you not, over 60 sites before finding somewhere. So please be patient. Please do not panic. And please continue to try to find a placement. I will provide you some tips and tricks and strategies. If you are getting stuck, we can talk about some of the things that might be getting in your way. We recommend you look within a 1-hour drive radius, so 60-mile radius, and being as flexible as possible with your schedule. There's a lot of sites that will allow you to see clients at night, on the weekends, even school sites. They do have night school in some places. They do have alternative school with different schedules. So you can try different districts that have different calendars than yours. Going to elementary, which might start earlier than high school, or go to high school, which runs later than elementary. So these are ways where you can try to get hours outside of your working hours. Begin looking for sites immediately after you attend the orientation today, and just start that process. You can use more than one site. However, you have to have 1 hour a week individual supervision at each site. You also have to divide your hours based on agreement by both sites, because you're basically splitting your practicum. And both sites have to go through the approval process, and both sites have to do the approval process every 2 weeks for hours, and complete the biweekly contact log every 2 weeks. So it's just double the work for for me and for the site supervisors doing a lot of work, but they're only getting half of your time. So I recommend that you instead try not to divide your hours, but rather try to do for school counseling, your practicum in one site, your internship in another, and your other internship in a third level. And then for CMHC, you are welcome to do your practicum and internship in the same place if you would like. We have 8 out of 10 students doing that this semester because they love their placements. They are already trained at their placement sites and everything was going smoothly. So it's not uncommon and it's perfectly fine to do it. You negotiate your schedule between you and your site based on the site hours of operation, the client needs at the site, and the student needs. Students can provide in-home counseling because a lot of sites do that, but they must have a staff member with them on every home visit. You cannot go into a home alone, period. And you need to follow site-designated COVID-19 prevention measures, including use of PPE if it's required by the site. I would highly recommend use social distance and use PPE if you're able, and avoid home visits if you can find a site that doesn't do that. You may never transfer clients in your car. I'm just going to say that. School counseling. For school counselors, elementary and secondary experience is required across practicum and internship. We recommend one level for each semester. We prefer all three in different districts, but it's not required. I have one student who lives in an area with one huge school district, so he can't do different districts. It's not a problem. Just do 3 different schools at 3 different levels, and you're good. There's no specific order. It may be easier to get hours in elementary school, so you might want to wait and do elementary as one of your internships. Also, if you're seeking job at a specific level, you might want to save it for your last placement because it might lead into a job. You never know. Certainly, it would give you recommendations at the level you're interested in working. It does need to be conducted in a public school, or if you're in Virginia, it can be an accredited private school. Only Virginia, though. No other states allow for that. The school needs to have a comprehensive developmental model of school counseling, which is the ASCA model. You may not know if the school has that, but the site screening form that I use will tell me, so it'll be fine. I'll be able to tell that. And then the site placement must be public school that falls under the operation of a state educational system and is funded by the local, state, and or federal tax dollars. It can include public schools located on military bases or in military communities, but not schools operated by the Department of Defense. Those are not considered public schools, so they do not qualify as placements. For clinical mental health, I already mentioned the types of sites that you might find. The site can be the same or different for prac and internship. We do say that, of course, getting experience with different populations, issues, and ages can be helpful. And we also say that, you can use your internship for populations or contexts of particular interest. Because you're spending so much more time in your placement in internship, I encourage you to just find a placement for practicum and really look at internship for your areas of interest, whether that's depression, anxiety, eating disorders, chronic mental health, LGBT population, minority populations, whatever it is that you're really interested in. Wait until your internship to really focus. Try and get a placement for practicum. For military and veterans concentration, you're looking for a setting that provides counseling to military veterans or military connected families. It does not have to work exclusively with a military veteran population. You're not restricted. This is not restricted to military veteran concentration students. Any students can work with these populations. So just be aware that you don't have to get a placement at a Veterans Administration or a military establishment. You actually can work in any site that provides services to military veterans or military connected families. So searching tips, you can check with your local United Way online to get lists of agencies in your areas that provide mental health services. You can also do Google searches for counseling, counselors, mental health, and add your city or county name, or do a Google search for specific issues or populations and your city or county name. You can also contact local private practice therapists and ask about resources they know of in your community. You can contact doctor's offices to see where they refer clients with mental health concerns, or look up national organizations like Children's Advocacy Center, SAMHSA, and PFLAG, and look for search for local resources that either provide mental health services or could suggest some mental health resources. Because these national organizations, many of them have a box where you can put in your zip code or your city and state, and it pops up local resources. So those are just a few of the little tips that you can use in looking for clinical mental health sites. With regard to private practice therapists, a lot of people ask if they can do their practicum with a private practice. You can, however, there's a risk to doing that. If the practice is too small, you'll be very isolated and you won't get the support that you need because your therapist is only one person and they may not be available to you when you need them. And also, you're not getting the broad range of experience in a limited private practice that you would in an agency setting. In an agency setting, there's people around all the time, and you get to really learn more about the field and get different perspectives on working with clients than if you're working in an individual practice. The caveat to that is there are some private practices that are large group practices designed and structured to actually be training facilities for students. These are different. These are actual good placements. And I do have some students that have worked in those kinds of site placements. So how do you know? You have to call and talk to the therapist and find out about their practice. You can also look online at their website. If it's a large practice with a lot of clinicians, oftentimes they'll also mention if they're a training facility or have a lot of students who work there. So those are just some of the tips for checking on that. This is the list that I was telling you I'm going to provide you. The previous page and this page are both on tip sheets that I'll be providing you. And so this is a whole bunch of national links that are search engines to help you find mental health services in particular areas. The first one, thero.org, is a national database of mental health clinics and centers, therapists, crisis resources, and advocacy and support resources. You can put in your city and state and it'll pull up a bunch of different agencies in your area. So I'll provide that via the PowerPoint as well as a separate tip sheet that you can use. So in terms of the site screening process, how we actually screen sites, for school counseling students, the student needs to obtain the contact information for the district contact person that handles school counseling placements. This is often HR or the same person that handles student teacher placements. It could be the head of school counseling. It could be an HR person. You just don't know. So you have to look at your particular district's webpage to see who the contact person is. You can, but do not need to, contact specific principal or school principal, a specific principal or school counselor at a school that you're interested in. Even if you do that, the person I need to speak to is the district contact person. So if you choose to email that site, that specific counselor or a principal, go ahead and provide them with the overview letter, the introductory letter that I provided to you in email. That will have the basic requirements of the practicum and give them an idea of what you need to do. And then I'm also going to develop a template that has some scripting in it that you can use when you're emailing to a school or to a site. Once you have done that, you complete the site registration in Qualtrics with the name and contact information of the school district of interest, or districts if there's more than one that you're interested in. I'm going to need the contact person for the district, their email, and their phone number. That's the main bits of information you'll need going into that site registration form in Qualtrics. Again, you do not need to contact the specific school or school principal or school counselor. What you do need to do is complete the site registration in Qualtrics with the name and contact information of the district contact person. The district, I'll work with the district. They'll assign the placement. Once I have the placement, I'll have the site supervisor's name and contact information. And from there, I'll take it. CMHC students will contact the potential site to inquire about placement options. Again, provide them with that letter, introductory letter that I gave you. That will tell them the basics about the practicum. And you can also, if you'd like, provide them a copy of the practicum manual if they want more information. I wouldn't provide that to the principal and school counselor because they don't necessarily, the principal certainly doesn't need it. You can give it to the school counselor though, if you'd like. You can, but don't have to, interview at the prospective site. The main thing is you have to know that the site is actually willing to take practicum students. It's important to let them know it's a 15-week practicum and that you're a counseling student at William and Mary. Because some sites only take internship students that are doing their 600 hours. So make sure you tell them it's a 100-hour, 15-week practicum placement. Some sites also only take postgraduate interns working toward licensure. If that's the case, then this isn't the site for us. If they say they only work with interns, then go ahead and write them down and keep them for an internship option. And then if you want to interview, that's great, you can. Don't accept the placement because you can't accept it until I have vetted the site. But certainly you can interview, it's fine to interview. But as soon as possible, complete the site registration in Qualtrics. In that, you'll be asked to provide me with the information for the site supervisor and the contact information for the site. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a new share, and I'm actually going to share. I linked to the Qualtrics site. Are you guys seeing Qualtrics now?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. So the Qualtrics site, when you click the link for site registration, and again, I'll email this link out to you. I'll provide it in the, it's in the training manual now that I've revised, and it's in email that I sent to you. When you go into this Qualtrics links, your name and email and banner will already pop up. How does it know that? It's magic. We've got it all set up for you. So I'll know who's going into practicum and internship. We'll have it ready for you. I'm sorry, I'm trying to see the question I've got in the chat. Oh, yes, thank you. When you go in here, you're basically going to verify this information is correct or not correct. And you're going to indicate practicum or internship. You're going to enter your first name and then click the arrow to go to the next page. Yes, I'm located in the US. And then you're going to enter all this stuff: city, state, zip, counseling concentration, which is school, clinical mental health, or clinical mental health, military veterans, year you started, et cetera, et cetera. It's several pages long. And one of the things I will tell you is you will need to have a copy of your license. Listen to me, your license. Your liability insurance before you fill this out. And I'll cover that in detail in just a minute. Okay, I'm switching back to the PowerPoint now. Okay. Oh, good question. When you are filling out city, state, and zip on the first page, it is your personal information. It will very much tell you when you need to enter site information, okay? So it will specify, I want to know your city and state first, because if I need to help you find a site placement, I need all that information. And so the first information you're going to fill out is all about you. Then you'll go to another page and it'll say site information. And then it's all about the site. And it will be asking for details about the site, okay? But these are things you'll be able to answer in terms of the location of the site, phone number, email address, contact person's name, etc. Okay, so for CMHC, I said that you'll complete the site registration. Okay. After you complete the site registration, the process pretty much goes the same way for both school counseling and clinical mental health. What happens in school counseling is I work with the school district contact person to arrange the placement. Then they send me the site supervisor's name and email address. So at that point, I send the site supervisor a link for a screening form in Qualtrics. With the clinical mental health, once you complete the registration, I send your site supervisor a link to the screening form in Qualtrics. So when we get to this stage, it's all the same process regardless. So once the site supervisor is identified, I send them a link to a screening form in Qualtrics. I schedule a site visit. They return the screening form and I review it. I conduct a site visit. Then if everything goes well with the site visit, which at that point it usually does because I've already done the screening, we've already had a preliminary email exchange, they know what the expectations are, it's generally pretty good. Site agreement form is then signed by you, the student, the site supervisor, and me in DocuSign. I'll send that out in DocuSign for signature. And then I will send to you and the site supervisor a copy of a signed field site authorization form, which is your ticket to practicum. That form basically says you have a site, we have a signed agreement with the site, and you're ready to go. You're ready to start prac. And that's all, you're done. So it's pretty easy on your end. Once you find a site or a district, you just put it into that registration form and I take it from there. The next part, I keep you posted on everything. So I'll keep you posted on where I am in the process, but I tried to make it streamlined and a lot easier for students. So I mentioned professional liability insurance. One of the things that you'll need to make sure is that you are covered through William and Mary for liability. However, KCREP requires that all students have an additional individual professional liability insurance policy. You can obtain this easily through ACA, ASCA, or AMCA, as long as you're a member. So they offer their graduate student members liability insurance protection as a part of their membership dues. Excuse me. So I think ACA is $125 for student members. I think ASCA's a little less, and I don't know what AMCA is. But with your membership fee as a student, you are able to get liability insurance. Now, just because you pay your membership fee doesn't mean you automatically get insurance. You actually have to go to their website, and these links are here for a reason, because they will take you to the liability insurance information page, which will tell you how you actually get the insurance, and will guide you to a link where you can download what's called a certificate of insurance. And you'll need a copy of that certificate of insurance in order to upload it when you register your site in Qualtrics. So what I do is I don't recommend one of these agencies over the other. I recommend you look at the websites for ACA, ASCA, and AMCA, and that you select the one that best fits your interests and professional needs. Because if you're a school counselor, you may say ASCA is best for you. ACA does both school counseling and clinical mental health counseling. ASCA does school counseling. AMCA just does clinical mental health counseling. So ACA is good for both. ASCA is specific to school, and AMCA is specific to CMHC. So you can look at them all. You get a journal when you're a member. You also get access to video resources and webinars and lots of journal information and other great resources online. So take a look at their website, see what's available, pick the one that best fits your needs, and then go ahead and get your insurance taken care of. Your coverage is immediate once you purchase your policy, and I say purchase your policy once you activate your policy through their website process for one calendar year from the date of purchase. Okay. And obviously, you may need to renew that for practicum and internship, but it usually covers you depending on when you get it. So here's some recommendations, tips to help you, strategies for dealing with practicum and internship, because it is a lot. Know the requirements for practicum and internship and prepare early. Bank any available time off with your employers or your school districts, and work collaboratively and creatively with your employers. See if you can explore modified workloads, flexible scheduling, or other accommodations with your employer that might allow you, just especially when you get to internship, to have some modifications to your job. With practicum, it's generally a maximum of about 8 hours a week at your site, and that is typically manageable for everybody. For internship, it's a lot harder because it's about 20 hours a week. But remember, some of those hours are going to be done coming to class. Some of those hours can be done on your own time if your supervisor agrees. So again, see what you can work out with your employer and with your site supervisor to try to balance. Remind your employer and yourself that modifications are temporary. Your educational achievement actually improves your communication skills, your professional skills. It gives you additional skills you can bring to your current job. No matter what your job is, you're still going to be improving your communication skills, your listening skills, your professional development. All of that is helpful to an employer. And then rally support personally for additional help with your family and personal responsibilities, and cut back anywhere you can. This is not the time to try and do some major new project, learn a foreign language, or do some big, recreational trip or anything like that. You want to keep things as simple as possible during your internship. Again, practicum is not as bad, but internship is tough. Seek out sites that have hours of operation outside your work hours if it's possible. Exploring districts on different calendars, public alternative schools, night school, or other options that don't conflict with teaching schedules for teachers. And remember, this is only 3 semesters. It is an investment in your future. It is demanding, but temporary. It's temporary, and it's worth it. You're moving into a profession, and professions require different things of us than other kinds of training that we might get for a job. With professions, and especially one like this, it's a learn as you do kind of job. I can bet that if I asked right now, how many of you are ready to see a client? You would not say you're ready to see a client. That's because the more you sit in a classroom, the more you get in your head, but you're not really getting the experience of doing it. And this is a learn by doing profession. So it's really important that we have the experience of learning to do it under supervision, where we're really guided and supported throughout the practicum and internship, so that you don't feel overwhelmed when you graduate and you are competent and capable and can practice ethically when you graduate. So the course requirements. This is for the course itself. We do require video recording. We do have a secure HIPAA-compliant SharePoint site where you can store your recordings, so that, and they are deleted at the end of the semester, but that way you can get them off of your laptop and have them in a secure place, and you can access them, and your site supervisor can access them, and you can review them, which you will be required to do one session a week to be able to improve your own reflection on your clinical skills and see areas where you need to grow. You also will be using them in sessions with faculty supervision in your group supervision for case presentation. So you have to do a signed consent for any recording session that you do. We encourage you to do your consent forms with the rest of your consent forms the first time you meet with a client. So you're going to introduce yourself to a client, go over all the informed consent documents, get signatures on everything, and you'll explain that you're a student under supervision, and as part of that process, you're asked to record sessions to be used for supervision to help you be able to provide better counseling services to the client, and that you're going to be the one that's being scrutinized, not the client. And the people that will be seeing it will be your supervisors and the students that are also in your supervision section. And that's it. And that confidentiality is held by everybody that sees that. So, so that can be helpful in presenting this to clients. We, as I said, will store we have a PDF version of the consent form for electronic signatures, so that you don't have to be at a site or worry about emailing things back and forth. You know, I can actually provide the consent form to your site supervisor and let them provide it to the client. So there's a lot of ways we can handle this. Because we like it to be in that initial packet that the client fills out. So we actually want the site supervisor to have it and put it in that packet, intake packet. Store it in a client file at the site or in the SharePoint folder or in your site's documentation folder, whatever that might be. Use, and then the supervisor, if we have it in our SharePoint folder, the supervisor needs to download it and keep a copy, because we don't want a copy of that. We don't want to have client information for very long. We're only doing this as a temporary stopgap to help sites. So use your site provided recording equipment if your site, because many sites already have recording equipment available to students, or your William and Mary HIPAA compliant Zoom on your personal laptop. And then I'll poll everybody to see if you need that Zoom or if you already have a site provided platform you can use. And you can use third-party recording equipment as long as it records directly to your laptop hard drive and not to the cloud. Then you will upload it immediately after the session to SharePoint and delete it from your laptop. No matter what recording equipment you use, that's what you need to do. So never use a phone for recording. If you are doing in-person sessions or you're doing things on your phone, don't ever use that for recording. Both the client and counselor should be visible. That's preferred. Of course, if the client doesn't want to be visible, we will allow you to just record yourself or just the back of their head or something like that. But if we see you both, we can help you be a better counselor. Upload your file immediately after your session in the designated folder in SharePoint, and then remove the recording from the laptop immediately after verifying successful upload. Wait until you can go to SharePoint, make sure it's uploaded correctly, then delete it. Don't take the risk of deleting it before you've verified, because you might lose your video recording, and we don't want that. Okay, so the requirements for video recording, you're going to need to do weekly session reflections where you watch, a few weeks into the semester, we're going to have you review one session per week that you've recorded, and you complete and submit a counseling session reflection form. Watching your recording should take you anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, because you typically do 45-minute sessions with adults, 30-minute sessions with students or our children, and so that's how long it'll take for you to watch it again. And the session reflection form is about 4 questions. It's not real big, and you're basically going to fill that out and submit it once a week. And then you'll do 3 case presentations for your class. 2 will be submitted will be actually done in class in front of your peers, where you'll show a 10-minute segment of video and you'll submit an actual case presentation worksheet. There's a sample of that in the manual. And then there'll be one case presentation that's submitted directly to the instructor in Canvas that you won't present in your group supervision. And that was just done for the sake of time, because it takes a lot of time to do these case presentations in class, and we need to have class time to process cases that need to be discussed as well. So you'll do 2 case presentations in class and submit one more at midterm to your faculty supervisor in Canvas. The way it works out, you'll do one in the first third of the course, then at midterm, submit the individual case to your instructor in Canvas, and in the second third of the course, or first half of the course, you do 1 case presentation. Midterm, you submit one online to your instructor, and the second half of the course, you do another case presentation. And that's so that we see you at 3 different points in time in the semester. Record keeping. So documentation of client notes is done based on what your site or school requires. You follow their documentation and storage procedures. Because sites might be going online or schools might be doing virtual, you might need to do some virtual storage, which is why we provide that SharePoint folder. But if your site has procedures in place, follow those. If they have a storage location, use it. If you're doing things at the site or the school, store the document there at the site or the school and never bring it home. We don't want client data outside of the secure location where it is supposed to be stored for the site. If you're doing telehealth, ask your site supervisor how documentation should be completed and stored. We do offer that HIPAA compliant SharePoint folder that I'll provide to each of you with your specific name and share with your site supervisor for review and download of client notes if needed. How do you do hours? So you have to get all these hours. How do you log them? You're going to log hours in live text. The way this is going to work is you're actually going to receive an email prior to the beginning of the semester asking you to register with live text, and you register with live text using your William and Mary email address. You need to use your William and Mary email address because it will be linked to your site. So when you after you register and after we log your site and get your site in live text, you will be able to go in and you will see your site there under your name. You will just click to enter your time log. You click a button that'll say add hours, select the date of the entry, the number of hours you're logging, a description of the activity, and the time log category. So this one says classroom management. So for school counseling, that might be one of the options. You'll see individual counseling, site supervision, individual supervision. You'll see synchronous group supervision. You'll see group counseling. So there'll be a variety of categories here. Training, documentation, research, all of those will be different categories in this drop-down box. And then you click save, and you do that for every hour or every encounter that you have. So it will be logging clinical hours, it'll be logging non-clinical hours, and you need to estimate your hours to the nearest quarter hour. So you should be in increments, and I'm going to write all this out. I'm sorry it's not in here. It will be there before you get the copy of the PowerPoint. It'll be in increments of a quarter hour. So the minimum you should have, oh, it actually doesn't do that. Yeah, the minimum you should have is 15 minutes, round up. So if you did 10 minutes, it's 15. If you did 20, it's 30. If you did 35, it's 45. And if you did 50, it's an hour. So you round up to the nearest quarter hour, 15-minute increments, and then you click save. And that's how you log your hours. Your site supervisor is going to also use live text to go in and approve your hours. They'll go in bi-weekly. They will, again, get an email in the beginning of the semester telling them to create an account in live text. It will be linked to your, using their email account at the site that I have. It will be linked to all the information on the site and to your name, and they will go in and approve your hours every other week. The reason they approve every other week and you submit weekly is because they also go in every other week to complete a contact log. So we want them only going in one time and making it easier on them. They will also use live text to complete a midterm and final evaluation of your performance at the site. The faculty will also complete evaluations at midterm and final and do a professional performance review of each student. The professional performance review process is in your student handbook, not the Practicum manual, but your student handbook, which is available on the counseling program website. And students will also go into, and these evaluations will be completed in Qualtrics, by the way. So the faculty will complete a midterm and final evaluation in Qualtrics and a PPR in Qualtrics, and students will complete an evaluation of the site and the supervision they received in Qualtrics and a final course evaluation, like you do for every class. Grading for practicum and internship is pass-fail, and it's based on meeting all the requirements, not just the hours, but all the requirements, and all of the Canvas course assignments need to be completed for you to pass. You also must get a satisfactory evaluation by your site supervisor to pass practicum. Ha! Cutting it down actually worked because I managed to get everything done before the end. So now I have time for questions. So I open it up. Any questions you have?
Do supervisors typically expect some sort of payment for this phase?
Good question. Thank you, Stephen. No, they do not. When you are master students, supervisors do not expect payment. I've heard this question multiple times, and I think what's getting confused is postgraduate internship and postgraduate interns. They are generally expected to pay supervisors, or they might get a job at a site, and part of their employment is free supervision. So a lot of sites will hire you as an LPC intern and provide you with free supervision as part of your job, which is really awesome. I have a student right now who actually was offered a job after she graduates, and she's not even started her internship yet. They've had her as a prac student. So, and she'll be able to get hours under supervision there. It doesn't always work that way, though. I have a lot of students I used to work with at Argosy and other sites. Some were able to get those kind of gigs. Others were not. And if you're not, then you have to get your hours where you can get them and pay a supervisor out of pocket. When I was in my doc program, I had to pay a supervisor for hours. So question, if your site's approved prior to the practicum start date, can you start observations or other work with the site? Good question. The answer is you can start volunteering at the site. You cannot start seeing clients until the practicum begins, and you cannot start accruing hours until the practicum begins. I fudge a little bit here, and I don't know if Lorianne's going to slap my hand, so I have to ask her. But I fudge a little bit here, and the week before the practicum begins, if there's training and orientation at your site that they want you to do to kind of so you can hit the ground running when practice starts, we allow you to roll those hours into your first week. Put them on your first week's log. So just include them in your first week. But, you know, I like students to begin to hit the ground running with practicum and not spend that first week of practicum training and doing orientation. Just roll the hours into the first week of practicum as if you did them that week. Okay? So it's a little bit of fudging, but trying to help you. But you can't count anything beyond that. Anything beyond that first week, it won't count toward your hours. You can certainly volunteer at your site, get oriented early if you want, so that you are ready to hit the ground running. Totally fine to do that. You just cannot see clients and provide any kind of clinical services until the practicum begins. Other questions? Good questions.
I have a question. It's sort of similar to what Steve was asking before, but it's also, so regarding finding a practicum site, so I guess the way it's related to what Steven said is when you go to look at different counselor sites or different agency sites, they will list supervision, and then with that is a paid service. So I assume that's what you're
yeah. Okay. Yeah,
so,
that's what I'm referring to. And if they list it as a paid service, what that means is post-graduation, you would need to pay for supervision at that site. Mm-hmm.
So in finding a practicum or even an intern site, it may not necessarily list supervision as a service in their list of services.
It typically won't. When you are looking at a site, again, everybody that's out there doing this already understands the training process. They've been through it. So they won't necessarily list on their site that they're doing training or supervision or something like that. If they list
Like
supervision,
that post
yeah,
graduate.
if they list supervision, it's because of post licensure supervision, and they list it because they get paid for it, and they get paid well for it, and that's why a lot of people do it. But for master's level students, sites are not going to necessarily worry about it. They're getting free labor. Let me tell you the good thing. A lot of sites are very happy to have prac students. Number one, a lot of supervisors at sites really get tired of seeing clients, and when they're in a supervisory role, they love actually providing supervision. They see clients and they do administrative work, but they really enjoy, a lot of them really enjoy doing supervision, and they are really happy to do it. It gives them a break from a lot of the stuff they are tired of doing. The other thing is that they're getting free labor. It allows the site to offer services to clients they can't otherwise serve. There's a lot of sites that are grant funded, and those grants only cover certain populations, but there may be like family members that need services, and they have to turn them away. Or there's a sliding scale, or there's some kind of, they don't have insurance, or they, whatever the case may be. You may have a private practice that's a training practice, and they take all the insurance people in their private practice, but anybody that comes to them that doesn't have insurance, guess who they refer them to? You guys. So you end up with all the people who can't pay them. And they love that, because then they get it's good for the practice. They don't have to turn somebody away. They can supervise you working with that person, that kind of thing. So generally, it's a lot of times students feel very apprehensive about going out there and asking, like they're asking for something, a favor. But in actuality, the experience of the sites is that many of them love having students. They love working with students. They have a natural desire to give back to the profession. And some of them are working on hours to become an LPC supervisor. And as part of that, they have to supervise somebody. And so you give them the hours they need to actually get trained to become an LPC supervisor, so they can earn more money, because they can then supervise LPC interns. So other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. Just so you know, you're not begging. You're actually giving them something. All right. Well, if you don't have other questions now, just know you can always email me, and I will continue adding, as I said, to the presentation and to the tip sheets and everything I'm going to give you as resources, so that hopefully you have a nice comprehensive package of resources to refresh your memory about everything I rushed through today, and that you can refer back to with any questions you have. But don't hesitate to reach out. As you go through the process, I'm sure you're going to run into different questions along the way. Just shoot me an email or call me or set up a Zoom. I am happy to talk with y'all anytime. Okay? All right. Thank you so much. It's good seeing you. And I can't wait to meet you all in person whenever that happens to be. I wish it was sooner, but take care and be safe. Okay?
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.